In this video, we are going to work on stage 3, working with text as graphics in the Against the Clock InDesign book on Project 2, the festival poster, which begins on page 131 in your textbook. From stage 2, your file should look like this. At the end of stage 3 today, it should look like this. So what we're going to do is add these inline graphics, add type on a path, and then we're going to add some kerning and fine-tuning for the text on our poster. First, put your cursor before Carolina Reapers, the first band name on the poster. I'm going to zoom in so you can see better. And then go to File, Place, and look for your concert folder and look for the music note AI file, and make sure that Replace Selected Item is checked and click Open. That's going to place this anchored object or inline graphic here from Illustrator. Then we can open up the Properties panel and format the size. So we can make this larger or smaller. Since it's a vector graphic, it can be sized larger without losing quality, but we're actually going to make it a little smaller. Using the Properties panel, make sure you click on these 3 dots to expand your options if you don't see these options. In the percentage for scale, type in 60% and hit Tab so that it places this object at 60% for both the width and the height, and it's proportional. So as you can see, that reduced the size of the music note that we're using as a bullet point or dingbat. And then we're going to format it some more. So with that object selected, go to your object menu and select Anchored Object Options. Then for the offset, make sure your preview is on so you can see what's happening. We're going to give it a Y offset of negative 0.05. I'm going to click on the down arrow and then select negative 0.05 and hit Tab. And you can see that drops that down below the baseline, negative 0.05 inches. Just so it looks a little more centered. If I uncheck preview, you can see how it looked before. See how it looked a little high, and then with preview on, it drops it down just a tad. So then click OK. Now, because it's an anchored object, it is now anchored as type or as a glyph or character. So if I switch to my type tool, I can now select that character or glyph, and I can copy and paste it as a bullet point on these next lines. So I'm going to do a Command C for copy, or you can go to Edit Copy. Then put your cursor on the next line and hit Command V or Edit Paste. And then do the same thing for the other lines. Oh, one thing I forgot to do. Sorry, let me undo that. I forgot to adjust the kerning. So let me go back up. Put your cursor in between the music note and Carolina Reapers and open your character menu. And we want to add some kerning to give some space in between the C and Carolina and the music note glyph or character here. So for the kerning, I'm going to select 200 points for my kerning. And now you can see there's a space in between. Now I can copy this music note and the kerning after it by hitting Command C, and I'm going to paste that by hitting Command V on the other lines, and now it includes that extra space because we added the kerning. So I'm going to do that on every line with the band name. And you can read more about anchored objects on page 134 of your textbook. We're going to move on to page 135 to create type on a path. So I'm going to fit my page in view, and you can see this is the path we want to create type over on top of this guitar shape. So to do that, it helps to draw a path that we want to place our text on so that we can place the text directly onto that path. So I'm going to place a pattern that already has that shape on it so that I can use that pattern to draw over. So we're going to go to File, Place again, and look for that concert folder and then look for the text path JPEG and open that, and I'm going to just place it on my page and use the properties panel to make sure it's at the 0, 0 mark on the XY axis. If you want to, you can even lock that layer down so that it doesn't get shifted and moved around. I'm going to zoom in closer here. So what we want to do is recreate. This is a raster image. We want to make a vector path using this as a pattern. So I'm going to select my pen tool, or you can hit the key P, and then I'm going to make sure to select my default fill and stroke so that there's just a stroke of black and no fill. And I'm going to actually decrease, I have my stroke set to 6, so I'm going to decrease it to 2 points. And I'm going to click at the left side of that pattern, and then I'm going to release my mouse and then click somewhere in the center of this curve, click and drag to create a Bezier curve. Then I'm going to click and drag again at the low point, and then click and drag at the very end. Okay, you can see this doesn't quite match, so I can fix that, no worries. I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool, which is the white arrow, or hit the letter A on the keyboard. I'm going to click on the point itself, and then you can see these two handlebars on the left and right side. I can just drag those out until it matches the pattern or the image underneath it. And I want to try to use the least number of points as possible to keep my processing time and file size down. But if you need to use more points, that's fine. It just takes a while to get used to drawing the curves and adjusting those handlebars until you get the right amount of the curvature and until you can get the least amount of points. If you have to use more points in the beginning, that's perfectly fine at this point. All right, I think that's close enough for now, so I'm going to leave it at that. And then you can even change this color because we're going to put text on this path. You might want to change it to a different color just so it's not black text on a black line. So you can make it this cyan color if you wanted to, just to create some contrast. Then we're going to switch to the type tool and then hold down your mouse to find the nested tools and select type on a path tool. Then click on the left side of that vector line, and now you can place your type tool on top of that line or that curve. And then we're going to type in Weston Summer Concert Series on top of that line. So it doesn't look right yet, so we need to format the text some more. So highlight the text to select it and open your character menu, and we're going to set it to an ATC font, ATC Garnet Medium, and then select the 24-point size. And then I can now do a couple things. I can go back to that stroke and go to swatches and set that stroke to none now. And then I can go back to my layers and I can unlock that path, and I can also delete it by hitting the trash can because I didn't mean to delete the text here. So I can go back to select the text path pattern. I don't need that anymore, so I can delete that. I don't want to delete the whole layer, so just select the text path JPEG and delete that. So now I can see, if I zoom in here, how this text looks on the guitar. So we still need to fine tune and adjust it. It doesn't quite sit right on there yet. So I'm going to select that text frame with the type on the path, And if you notice there is a square on the left where the beginning of the type is, I can click on that square and then drag to the left. I'm going to reset that by hitting the selection tool. So if you drag to the left, that allows you to move the text on top of that path. All right, so let me try to show you again. Click on that square where that cursor is, where your first line of type is, and then drag to the right. I may have said to the left, so drag to the right. And see, it's loading my text on the cursor, so I want to reset that by clicking on the selection tool. So now if you see that line with the arrow pointing to the right, click and then drag to the right, and that moves the text on the path. So I want my text to fill this within my purple page margin. I don't want it to be outside of that page margin or it'll be too close to the edge of the page. So I'm going to keep moving it until it's closer and within that page margin there, that purple page margin. So now I've got it pretty much where I wanted it inside that page margin. But I got some funky stuff here with this R running into the T. So sometimes when you're placing text on a curve or on a path, you can have some weird stuff happening. And so we need to fix that. So this I'm going off book right now because I don't think the book really addresses that so much. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my type tool and select this text. And then I'm going to go to my character menu, and I'm just going to make this a tad smaller. I'm going to make it 23 points instead of 24. Now you see the R and the T are not squished together, and I'm going to put an extra space in between concert series to open that up more. In fact, I'm going to put one space and I'm going to add some kerning. So I'm going to add, let's try 200, and maybe that's too much, so I'm going to go to 100. All right, then if I back up, I can see that's looking a lot better. It's not all squished together. I'm going to select this text again and go to swatches, and now I'm going to select that metallic gold color. And I'm going to fit my page in view and turn off the guidelines so I can see this better. So this is looking pretty good. However, I'm still not quite satisfied with this gold color over that purple because I feel like there's not quite enough contrast between the two, and there could be more contrast between those two tones. So I'm going to select this with my selection tool and go to my effects panel and select the drop shadow, and I'm going to customize my drop shadow here. I'm going to keep it at 75% here because I want it to be a dark shadow so that it can differentiate the text over that purple background. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and offset and the distance smaller, and I want to make the size of my shadow smaller too. So I don't want it to be a really big shadow. I'm going to go with 0.0625, and I want my shadow to honor these other effects like the multiply effect in that background image. And I can toggle the preview off to see how it looked before and then how it looks with that drop shadow, and I think it really helps that text to pop out a little bit more. So I'm going to hit OK, and now I've completed my poster. If I can turn my guidelines back on, I still have my page margin, bleed margin. I've got my anchored object inline graphic. I've got my type on a path with the drop shadow. Everything's still within my page margin, so it's not, my readable text is not too close to the edge of the page. And that concludes stage 3 for the festival poster.